What's up, Addicts? It's Graham and Josh here. We're going to be reviewing Midsommar.
Yep.
Ari Aster's new film. So coming off the heels of Hereditary, which I loved. Josh has yet to see it.
I still haven't seen it.
Which is okay. He should have seen it first, but it's whatever.
It did not affect my impression of the film.
It was probably actually better that you didn't see it. Honestly, because when I went into it, I loved Hereditary. Like I said, I think it's a brilliant movie. One of the best horror movies, I think, of the past, 10, 20 years even. So it was a struggle for me not to get my expectations, way too high for Midsommar. I have expectations, because you see he's a very skillful director as far as, the camera work and the lighting and it. Technical, right. He's very, very good. And the storytelling was fantastic in Hereditary, and he wrote it, and he also wrote this. So I kind of expected the same. It's just kind of hard to gauge,
I will say,
how much I should expect from this.
Very different setting compared to his other film. I don't know if you want to touch on that at all. Yeah,
we can touch on that because there's quite a bit of contrast. Because for one thing, Hereditary is very dark, both emotionally but also lighting. There's not a ton of light, and he hides things in the shadows and whatnot. And Midsommar, it's all light. Because we'll get into that part during this when we talk about the story, but it's all shot in light pretty much. There's barely any dark.
It is probably the most colorful horror movie you'll see today.
yeah, it's very, very colorful.
Yeah, a lot of flowers. Yeah, a lot of sunshine,
dancing, singing.
Yeah, it's a happy time.
Doesn't sound like a horror movie though, does it?
No, it doesn't.
No. So the story. So pretty much the story is. There's a girl, what's her name?
Danny,
yes. Bad with names, my bad. But the main girl, her name is Danny. It kind of explores her relationship with her boyfriend. And Ari Aster said in an interview, this is kind of the worst breakup of all time, pretty much is what he's directing. And it pretty much is the worst breakup I've ever seen.
A lot of fallout.
Too much fallout. But she... gets worried because her sister's not replying to her emails and whatnot. Turns out her sister killed herself and the parents, so lost her whole family in one swoop. And that probably sucks, So she gets very depressed, obviously. Just lots of crying, very emotional. And immediately hits on grief, which Hereditary dealt with brilliantly. So I was expecting the same from this movie. So it hits on the grief aspect, and she goes to her boyfriend and his friends who actually don't like her because they know this is a bad relationship, and they try to tell him. But they're hanging out with them, and then they let slip, hey, we planned a trip to Sweden, and trying to be nice, but also kind of force her into, do you want to come? And she's like, yeah, I'll come. I'll tag along. And so from there, we bring the depressed girl to Sweden to check out this pagan cult. And they're college kids, so one of them's gonna do his thesis on the pagan lifestyle and whatnot, and that's the premise for the movie, and then it just kind of gets weird.
Yeah. Very close. Very weird. Gets unnervingly close.
Sometimes.
But yeah, I guess we're going to talk about the stuff that we liked about the film first. I guess kind of segueing into that, you were talking about the camera work, which seeing this director in the first time, because I haven't seen Hereditary, I was actually really impressed by that. That's probably the thing I loved the most about this movie was, some of the imagery he used throughout the film. At the beginning, I think it starts off really strong. Yeah. You get to see, in a horror movie especially, I think kind of when... developed like this, you're gonna look for all the little details because those are gonna end up mattering. Yeah. So even really early on at the beginning, maybe in the first 10 minutes or so, Danny has this painting in her room that is of a little girl having a flower halo, I guess, and then she's touching a bear. Yeah. And I don't know how much we want to go into the spoiler aspect of this, but
we'll leave it alone.
Yeah, that mirrors heavily to what happens what relates to everything that happens.
If you're paying attention, you'll catch some things like
there's
that.
Also one that I think this isn't much of a spoiler, I would say, because it's just it doesn't give any plot deals away. But at the beginning of the movie, it starts with these kind of ritualistic screamings or chants, and it cuts very suddenly, and there's a phone ringing. And then later on in the movie, you get to see Danny screaming in a very similar way.
Yeah.
And there's also even a point where she's crying. And it sounds very similar to that, like it's mimicking it.
She's
Which,
like
by the way,
scream crying.
I will say, it doesn't sound good, right? You get even a little bit annoyed. I was a little bit annoyed.
Attractive.
No, it's not at all. But I think it's really cool because it's distinctive enough to where it's like if you analyze it, you can I can tell that that's like that. So it's just little things like that. I mean, more in like a camera work. There was one that you and I both really appreciated. There was a transition. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, go ahead. Hit that. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, because they have this scene where she wants to go to the bathroom, and so she goes in, and I think the door shuts. She shuts the door behind her, and then when it transitions back, you see that she's in a different room, and it's actually when they're on the plane.
Of the airplane.
Yeah,
and she's crying again.
And that transitions you can't even tell that.
It was really nice.
It was really
nice transition.
Smooth. I mean, you touched on the lighting, which I think is really bold for a horror movie.
That's what was interesting because it's actually kind of a pretty incredible challenge to put yourself in because horror, a lot of it relies on, especially something that's jump scare heavy. You want stuff coming out of the shadows, the corner of the screen, and whatnot. But to put it in harsh light, where you can pretty much see everything coming, you kind of get stuck with you better make whatever is coming visually stunning.
Right.
Or just make it extremely uncomfortable, which they find he finds ways to do and play around with through the use of psychedelics.
Yeah.
Lots of drugs in this movie.
Very much so. I don't know what kind of digital effect they use, but there's some cool ones in there.
Yeah.
I think I don't know why, but it made me think of American Werewolf in London when they do the werewolf transformation in Harsh Light. It kind of has I mean, I'm not going to say it's as what would you say, game changing as that, but he definitely doesn't slack in the effects department. So a lot of them, it looks like practical effects. There's definitely some gore in there that is done really well. It doesn't look cheap. It doesn't look fake.
And I wanted to touch on that. That was another thing that I really liked quite a bit, because if you watch Hereditary, of course, going into this, you'll probably have some expectations like I did, but also specifically with the violence, because if you pay attention at all in Hereditary, and it's hard not to notice this at least, Ari does not use violence
as a reward.
Yeah, it's not really a reward, because we've discussed this, and this is a discussion for another time, but horror fans in general, I think, just kind of the general audience horror fans, not necessarily all the hardcore fans, have been kind of trained to enjoy the gore and anticipate the kills, and
see those naughty teenagers
slashers,
having sex,
just get their heads ripped off and stuff like that. And that's all well and good, if you're into that, and they can be lots of fun. But Ari uses violence almost it feels like a punishment. You see these things and you see these horrible images, and you're I'm not gonna sleep for a little bit after that. I don't want to see that, And he does it again in this movie very effectively. There's a few scenes that stand out to me that I didn't enjoy looking at the screen, which I think is awesome. I think I'd like to see more of that from other directors and see how they do that, but he definitely makes violence, because there's not a lot of it in this movie. There's quite a bit more than Hereditary, but there's not a lot in this movie, but when it happens, it hits really hard. And I think that's really cool. That's pretty special.
I think one of the things he does really good in terms of creating the world is his characters. I think he got some really good actors, and for the most part, I think most of them did pretty well. I would definitely say the main lead, what's her name, Florence Pugh.
Florence Pugh, I guess was her name. Florence.
Sorry,
Miss Florence,
if I'm mispronouncing your name, but she did a really good job. A lot of her emotional scenes hit right on. Even the guy that plays as her boyfriend Christian, he's got some. He's put into some bad scenarios, and for keeping stoic, or the right emotion that he needs to have for that is props to him. But I thought the way that they were built up, kind of them giving backgrounds and stuff like that, those were all good, but the acting was really solid. I wasn't disappointed with that as much as some of our other gripes, which I don't know if you want to highlight anything. If you got anything else to highlight, you can shout it out real quick.
I mean, I don't know, ultimately, on the technical side, from, we said, camera work, lighting, everything like that, the acting, it's all very well done. I think most of the problems that we have are just with the writing. Yeah. Which is sad to say, because, like I said, Hereditary, I think, is brilliant. And the writing was superb in that movie. And in this one, it either kind of falls flat in areas, or just kind of like I actually don't know what I'm supposed to think about it, which we're going to touch on, because I think one of the first things that I noticed was, and this is little, so we'll just breeze past this, but I think the movie does drag a little bit. It's almost a 2.5 hour movie.
Yeah.
So it's a long ride, and it definitely kind of drags from time.
And it doesn't feel like it's, because there's some movies that have a longer duration and it doesn't, I don't know, maybe it doesn't feel dragged on, or maybe you just are appreciative of it because it's building momentum. This one, in the parts that it lulls, doesn't really feel like it's building upon anything. It's just waiting out its time.
Yeah,
at least maybe that's just a personal thing, but that's kind of how I felt about it.
Yeah, I think there are definitely some scenes that it felt like they might have been building suspense for some reason, but there wasn't anything specific, and then nothing happened, and I was like, well, what's the payoff?
Yeah, there's, like you said when we were talking, there's plenty of scenes where they're doing, like their ritual stuff. Like, I mean, they're just like having dinner or whatever. Yeah. And it's literally like 10 minutes of them just eating. Yeah. Or sitting around, or maybe like playing a game or whatever. Yeah,
granted, there is one dinner scene that, because there's, 2 or 3? There might have been too many, but the one dinner scene that sticks out to me, Danny's boyfriend, Christian, in the movie eats something, and there's something in the food that definitely shouldn't be there, and that was definitely worth it.
It's meant to be there.
It's meant to be there. It's a cultural thing. Pagans have weird practices, I guess.
Yeah,
but I'm not going to go into that anymore, because that'll spoil some stuff. But, yeah, that also kind of leads to, like, if you want to talk about, like, there's some scenes that, there's definitely comedy in this movie. There's comic relief. Mm-hmm. But some scenes, I don't know if I was supposed to be laughing, and I was.
Yeah, there's, I don't know. I think maybe it's just I've seen too much fucked up shit. Maybe that's what it is, and I don't have the reaction I'm supposed to. But there is a lot of scenes in this that I don't feel like quite land in the way that he wanted it to. Yeah. Like, there is, like, I mean, this isn't much of a spoiler, but there is an uncomfortable... I use uncomfortable in air quotes because I didn't really feel uncomfortable in this scene, but there is a sex scene in it that's supposed to be, kind of like disturbing on multiple levels, and it definitely is awkward, but I was just kind of like, yeah, that's gross, but can we move on? I mean,
our theater was like laughing pretty hard during that scene, and I was like, is this supposed to be, I don't know if it's supposed to be funny. I think it's supposed to disturb. And, like, the idea of it's very disturbing, but seeing it and the way they did it, it felt goofy, maybe?
Yeah, that's probably a word.
I don't know about goofy. I think it's just so bizarre. I was like, okay.
And I think it goes back to you, like, maybe it's just so, because Graham said this when we, like, after we got out of there, like, maybe it's just supposed to be, like, such a foreign concept because of, like, the theme of, like, culture differences that you have no other reaction other than, like, laugh. Yeah. But I generally don't feel like it quite got the payoff that it was supposed to be aiming for.
No, because the whole emotion behind what he's doing and who he's doing it to doesn't resonate like it should have. And it went on for way too long. It was like 10 minutes, I think. Yeah. It felt like 10 minutes.
Yeah, and there's definitely some where they are in that scene, they cut away, and then they jump back to it.
Yeah, then they come back to it again. Okay.
So, yeah, I think that has a little bit of a deal. I know Graham kind of pointed this out, where it feels like the film kind of loses sight of what it's trying to convey in terms of the theme, or like, what Danny is going through, and kind of like her transitioning into, what she is in the final act. And I think in scenes like this, and like, in the middle where we say it drags on a little bit, that's kind of felt. Yeah. I think there is also some things with the characters. This is like the last gripe I even have of it, and it's very minor. Probably, I don't think many people would probably even care, but there is, like, I don't want to say like most horror characters are supposed to be, like super smart. You definitely have a couple in there, but that end up ultimately doing something stupid that's going to kill them. But in this, it really doesn't make sense why some decisions were made by them. It definitely, I can see why some people might justify it. Like, there's definitely some wedges that end up, dividing, if you will, some of the characters, which I guess they're just like trying to convey, like, oh, they're so focused on like their wedge, they're not realizing what's happening around them. But I like the first big scene you get about like this is not a good situation they're in. I don't think any normal person, especially the characters that they convey them to be in the first act, would stay in this scenario.
Yeah, because the kids tend, I mean, they're college kids writing their thesis, but they portray them in the beginning as like pretty smart, educated people. And like he was saying, the first scene, which you'll know it, I'm not going to spoil it, but it takes place at a cliff. When they're seeing these things happen, and they have, a fairly normal reaction, but then they don't take action.
Yeah.
To what they're seeing, they're just. I don't know. I guess they might have been thinking like, it's a cultural thing, and obviously the pagans were like, oh, it's what we do. It's okay. And you're like, no.
They kind of conveyed that everybody that's brought there, that's an outsider, was brought with somebody that was from there. So, I mean, they don't really go into detail how long these people know each other. So, like, they have somebody that they know that used to live here. Yeah. So, maybe they're just like, oh, we trust them. But, I don't know. Again, that just seems like a very loose justification of that.
I don't know.
But I guess in closing, Graham, what is your final verdict for the movie?
Okay, it's very difficult, actually. Yeah, it's probably one of the tougher ones I've had to do. Because again, I'm trying to separate it from Hereditary, but it's hard not to, because while they are different movies, looking at it objectively, you see what Ari Aster is capable of in Hereditary, making like, damn near like a masterwork in that. Like people even regarding him as like the next king of horror, and then he releases Midsommar, and it's more like Prince. He's got to work to get there.
Yeah.
And again, mostly it was just the writing, but I'd probably have to give it probably a 7, because it is a good movie. But I can't recommend it to everybody. Same with Hereditary. Hereditary mostly though, because it is such a heavy movie, and if you don't think you can handle it emotionally, I would say steer clear. Whereas this movie, it's very artsy, very slow, and the pacing's a little off. Yeah. So unless you're a huge fan of Hereditary and you're dying to see this, go see it. Or if you are into those horror movies that take themselves very seriously and are very artsy and try to explore themes, check it out. But if you're kind of the typical, gore hound, or just want to see like fun jump scare action horror movies, then I wouldn't say you have to see this.
Yeah, it's definitely a movie that, for like the average moviegoer, I would say, if you're wanting to go to a movie to have yourself entertained, I don't really think that this movie really pertains to those types of, people that see movies. I mean, you'll definitely have an experience with it, whether that's good, bad, makes you laugh, makes you sad, whatever. That will be determined up to you. But I mean, you can definitely tell this, like. I think, it sounds like Hereditary was, really amazing for somebody that just had their first movie. This one kind of resonates that, he's still a beginner. This is still like, him trying to learn the field. I would say overall, I would give it a 7 too. It's a worth it. I just personally thought it was a little lackluster for a subgenre of horror. Like, I like cult stuff. And it just didn't quite give me the thing I was hoping it would, mostly because of some of the writing aspects. But it's still a good movie. It's not one that I would think you could watch several times over and over again, or one that you would really watch more than once. But I think that's just me personally, because of what we've said before. But anyway, guys, that'll conclude this review. We'll be back for more, and like, subscribe, all that other shit that we don't tell you to do. So,
do it.
See you guys. Peace.